Look, you're famous, guys. Look, everybody, you're famous. Are you really excited about being famous? I set up this little screen, by the way, because like you know, sometimes on stream I go into these little like mini rants and stuff where I'll talk about Hearthstone design or whatever thing, or like yesterday, for instance, we talked a lot about declining standard viewership. I think it's a little more interesting if chat is here and they're contributing to the conversation, and between the two of us, you know, the eye has something to kind of turn towards. I think that's a little bit more interesting to watch. You know, forgive me, I may not be super efficient at this, but have something on screen we talk about, turn it into a video, like a highlight, a stream snippet that's a Hearthstone topic of interest. So anyway, I set up this little screen. It's really not much, like 5 minutes, but I'm making a big deal out of it. So anyway, here's the video I wanted to talk about. If you guys didn't see this, from Hearthstone Mathematics, if you've never seen these videos, the production value of these is insane. I don't always love all of their data and all of everything, but you know, that's okay. We all have differences on how things should be interpreted and viewed and such. But overall, I'm still highly respect the channel a ton. And they put out this video, it's been a few days now, called "Why is Hearthstone Dying? Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels is more interesting than Hearthstone." And we actually talked about this a little bit on stream yesterday. To recap, I sort of laid out the dramatic decline that we've seen in standard format Hearthstone, in particular on YouTube. Like back in the day, there were a ton of standard format Hearthstoners: Trump, Kibler, Dexter, Regis, Firebat, to name a few. And like 3 of the 5 I just named don't even make videos anymore for Hearthstone standard format, at least currently. Who knows if they'll come back or not. I don't want to condemn anybody forever, but the viewership hasn't kind of filled in the gaps. The remaining Hearthstone standard format YouTubers are still seeing a decline in viewership despite all those people quitting. So those viewers moved on to something else. They don't care about standard, whatever it is. The audience to support that part of the viewership is just dissipating. It's gone. Standard format seems to have less and less sort of content engaged audience. Does that mean they're playing the game less? I don't know. I don't have data on that. This video tries to break that down to some extent from what visible data we do have. But I do know that they're not as engaged on YouTube, at least. And certainly not on Twitch either. Twitch is almost all Battlegrounds viewers. I watched this video the other day. I thought it was pretty well done, actually. Let me drop a link to it so you guys can find it, by the way. I don't want to just... We're not going to watch the whole thing or scam views or whatever, but let me drop a link to this so you guys can watch it in chat later if you want to bookmark it or whatever. But Hearthstone Mathematics runs through a lot of the data, and this is like from Blizzard's quarterly report. They've went from 46 million users, monthly active users, to 26. A lot of that I think can be explained by World of Warcraft and Overwatch's decline, but I'm guessing Hearthstone has had a hand in that as well. Can I make myself smaller? Yeah, sure. I want it to be a little bigger than normal, but I can see that I am clearly taking up the screen. Yeah, like I said, we're figuring this out along the way. This is all new. Yeah, I'm clearly taking up too much view. Yeah, I wanted you to be able to see my face while we're talking, but this is clearly a little overdone. This is probably a good middle ground somewhere. Twitch viewership, as you can see, all these red numbers way down across the board. Actually, my Twitch viewership's doing better lately. I don't know if that's because I'm one of the few people doing non-Battlegrounds, but I'm actually doing pretty well lately on Twitch. Probably because we're doing sick content like this. Top of the line. Incredible content. Yeah, we're going to talk about why, by the way, in a second. I'm kind of setting up the premise here. Oh, here's web search. Hearthstone over time has decreased a ton. It's still technically higher than these competitors like Runeterra, Magic, and Gwent, but so you can see this blue line has dramatically dropped over time. Kind of peaks every expansion, but barely peaks anymore. Oh, reviews are terrible. There's a section about how bad reviews are for Hearthstone, which is crazy. And then here's kind of the meat of this, what I really wanted to talk about. So they posit that the reason Hearthstone is decreasing is reputation, meta, and cost. And I think that's a very good breakdown. Blizzard's had some horrible reputation problems as of late. Obviously, the lawsuit, all of the craziness there, that turned a lot of people off Hearthstone. Even before that, we saw like the Blitzchung thing had people leaving. We saw the Battle Pass fiasco had people leaving. And then we had the lawsuit. People, I get so many messages when that stuff happens, like, I just don't feel like playing Hearthstone anymore. Like, you know, it's tainted to me. Like, it's just hard to support Blizzard. So a ton of people use that as their exit point. Like, clearly they were probably already drifting away from the game a little bit, and then that just pushes them over the edge. Like, that's the final straw, right? That breaks the camel's back. So I do think reputation has been a significant chunk of it. And I think to some extent, you know, like over time, that can be solved, obviously. Like the Microsoft buyout, like, oh, it's Microsoft now. The leadership's changed. I can support Blizzard and Hearthstone again. The problem, though, is that once people leave Hearthstone, it's really, really hard to get those people to come back because of this third problem mentioned here, which is cost. Once you kind of break away from Hearthstone, the cost of re-entry into Hearthstone becomes really prohibitive because you know, if you miss a few expansions, you have to go back and catch up on those expansions in many cases. Not every card, obviously, but you have to go back and craft all these other cards. And it makes it this like daunting task. Like, oh, if I come back, I'm going to have to like open so many packs. I'm going to have to try to catch up. And those two go hand in hand. So Hearthstone has this problem where every time they lose a player because of a reputation thing, a bad meta experience, whatever it is, whatever drives that player away, it's so hard to pull them back because the longer they're gone, in particular, the harder it is to pull them back. I know there are a ton of players who like play when an expansion comes out and come back each expansion. That's a pretty healthy, normal cycle. It's the ones who go away for like 6 months to a year who miss a couple expansion cycles that it's just like, what do I do to get back in? Like, I'm so far behind, and it's just even if it's not that hard to like catch up, if you just grind a little bit, get some packs, it's more like the psychological side of it. It's like, oh, I've missed so much, I'm never going to be able to keep up. And that happens to me with Runeterra. And Runeterra doesn't have like a cost prohibition at all. It's super easy to get stuff in Runeterra, but I play Runeterra like every 6 months and hit Diamond or whatever. And then like I want to play Runeterra right now, but it's like, oh, I got to learn so many new cards. I got to go get all these cards. I got to come back. It becomes this like daunting headache to try to solve. And that's why it's so important to keep players in the first place. Because as soon as they lose them, it's impossible to bring it back. So you have to have high retention. And Hearthstone, I think, has trouble with that because all the reputation stuff hit. I think there are a lot of negative meta experiences that drive people away where they just get really frustrated by overpowered things or power crept things or just like bad experiences. Like, oh, I'm 8 Frost Novas in a row, I'm done, right? So every little moment you lose somebody like that, it's so much harder to pull them back. And Hearthstone's so old now, it's hard to bring new players in too because they go, oh, that game's been around for 8 years. It has the same like daunting, how can I get started? And they've done stuff to help that a little, like returning player decks and new player decks. And they've tried to ease that onboarding process a little bit, but it's still just so much to catch up to. I think what needs to happen is like really remove that barrier to entry, make it so it's very easy to come back into the game. Stuff like the core set, the returning player decks were steps in that direction, but it doesn't feel like they've gone far enough. People still feel like it's too hard to get back in. I was thinking today, like MOBAs. MOBAs always have like a hero pool that rotates, right? Like if there's 100 characters in a MOBA, you might have like 10 that are like free to play this week. And each week it's like a different 10 free to play heroes. It would be so sick if Hearthstone did that for legendary cards or like decks. Like, you know, this little mage hero power thing is free this week. Come play a hero power mage for this week. Or like, you know, these 5 legendaries are free this week. Come play these 5 legendaries. So that if you don't have those, you have a reason to come back in and play cards for free. It's like a reattachment point. It makes things more accessible. It gives you a reason to play something new and fun that you wouldn't otherwise get to play. That's one thing I was thinking about. It could be kind of cool. The re-entry is why Battlegrounds is so popular. No cards needed, but it sucks when you're playing against people who smurf and destroy lower level players. Yeah, that's exactly right. Battlegrounds has no collection to manage, so you just hop in, you're ready to play right away. There's no cost of entry at all, so you hop in, you're ready to play. If you want to get Battlegrounds perks, that helps, but you don't really have to necessarily to still have a good time. Traditional Hearthstone needs that. The problem is that traditional Hearthstone has been a cash cow for so long. Blizzard has gotten fat off the milk of packs. You know, the pack system is a moneymaker, of course, that you can't really pull away from it too much. You know, like the corporate entity is like, hey, no, wait, no, we can't kill this monetization model that's made us so much money over the years. So they're kind of stuck between this rock and a hard place. The problem is, of course, how long can you drain that moneymaker? How long can you milk that cow before it's, before it's bone dry? Eventually they're going to have to do something to change that. So the other side of this was meta. Yeah, I mean, obviously there are metas that some players like and some players hate, and that has a big influence on people staying or leaving. I think in particular, it's like those really feel bad decks and moments that drive people away. Like I always said back in the day, I wonder how many players quit the game because of Shutterwalk loops. Like the Shutterwalk loops, just like, whatever they were back then, freezes and armor gains and those infinite Shutterwalk loops. How many people use that to quit the game and never came back? Because it was like, this is so stupid. I'm done with this game. Even I on stream feel that way sometimes. Like the infinite arcane frost over loops and duels lately have had me like, oh God, just make it end. Like I'm so sick of this. Now I'm obviously not going to quit playing Hearthstone from one moment, but I have a very high attachment to the game for a variety of reasons. It's both my job and I have been in love with it for years, but that's not everybody, right? Some people are just going to leave. It's like, so screw this. I'm done, dude. I'm uninstalling this garbage. So I think avoiding those like really big pendulum swing feel bad moments would be something. I've heard a talk, I think it was from like Rosewater or somebody, the Magic the Gathering designer, who said like, you want players to feel things, and even if they're feeling bad things, it's better than if they're bored. And that's certainly logical, and Rosewater is far more intelligent of a game designer than I would ever be. So, I don't want to call that into question too much. I do feel like the longer a game's lifespan, or further into a game's lifespan you are, the kind of less and less true that becomes, because most people playing Hearthstone at this stage are really entrenched in the game. Both, they have a commitment to it from a financial standpoint, these sunk costs, essentially, which may be a fallacy, but it's still a thing that happens. So I think it's more about just maintaining the status quo almost in a lot of ways, as opposed to, like creating these really divisive moments. I think that's good early in a game when people are willing to, tolerate a little more, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's even the other way around, though. It's like maybe people are more willing to tolerate negative experiences because they've been entrenched in the game so long. So I don't know. Makes me nervous, though, every time those bad moments exist. Like, how many people just leave forever? Because once they leave, like we said, we've established it's really hard to bring them back. So the other side of the meta conversation is like OTK decks and card draw and discounts and all that stuff that really frustrates people. I would maintain that Hearthstone doesn't really feel the same in standard format to me as it used to back in the day. That's a pretty ethereal kind of statement. Like, what does that mean? It's so subjective, and I've heard a lot of other people say it too, though. Like, the game feels like you're playing from hand a lot more than from board. Obviously, that's never, 100%. It's matchup dependent, meta dependent. It shifts, it moves, it's malleable. But overall, the trend to me has felt less and less like kind of OG, honest Hearthstone, and more towards like combo, heavy card manipulation, like, playing a million things as opposed to a couple things. Kibler's put out some great videos on that. Zeddy talks about it a lot, like the feel of the meta. The one thing I'll say about the Hearthstone design philosophy that makes me nervous, or at least I feel like has gone in a weird direction, is I feel like deck synergy creep has become a problem. Power creep on an individual card level is really not that crazy. If you look, like, compare cards across eras, it's like, oh, okay, that's actually pretty reasonable. But synergy creep, or I guess you could say power level at a deck level as opposed to at an individual card level, to me feels so much stronger. And what happens when you have decks that are really refined synergistically, in other words, packages that work super well together and have had these designs that are, I think, called parasitic designs, where they're very intertwined, like they're designed to work specifically together in this little card package, this bundle of 5 to 10 cards or whatever. It's made to be good, and it's designed around itself. Really extreme examples would be like SI7 cards for the Rogue quest line, but there are other sub examples too that aren't quite as explicit as literally them all having the same name. But regardless, what happens is they're designed in a way to be really good. And the reason that happens is because the devs want new decks to pop up. And if they make this really good package, they know it's going to be new, they know it's going to be exciting, and they know it's going to work. So it solves a lot of problems from like changing up the meta. It makes the meta feel fresh and different. People have new decks to play, and you can kind of make it fun too, because you can design all these pieces to work really well together. So it solves a lot of design problems in that way. But what I worry is that it kills deck diversity and collection value. Because what happens is they design 4 or 5 of those decks every expansion that are going to be the best decks, and that package is going to work. And then you play those 5, and that's it. And any other card that doesn't fit into those packages kind of just falls to the wayside. 70% of your collection doesn't really matter anymore. So opening packs doesn't really feel good because you're just kind of converting all the garbage into the 5 or 6 really well-designed synergies. And then you can't play off meta stuff as successfully as you used to could. So I worry that by designing these really refined game plans and really directed parasitic kind of decks, do cards matter anymore? Or are you really just kind of crafting decks or crafting packages or bundles of cards? Yeah, it's kind of like they're selling deck recipes more than expansions in some way, right? Not functionally, but, or not literally, but functionally, it feels that way a lot of the time. Cards are kind of transient now. They're dust more than they are cards, because most of them are useless. And of course, I work really hard to take bad cards and make them into real decks to solve that problem, but it's hard. It's harder than it ever was before. You can still do it, still get some hits here and there, but it's really tough. Is Hearthstone dying? No, of course not, right? And this video does a good job of sort of acknowledging that. Like, it's still a very popular game overall, right? It's still, there still is an enormous player base for Hearthstone compared to most games. It still ranks in the top 20 on Twitch. I still have a job, right? Like, I'm not, like, yes, my video's doing much worse the last week or two, but even when they're doing worse, I still do fine. Like, I know I'm not in trouble or anything like that. So no, the game is not dead. Is it declining? Yes. Is it declining even more than ever before? For standard format, most signs and most data would point to yes. Why is that? I do think it's indeed a combination of these 3 things. You know, fixing all 3 of these could go a very long way. I also have to say one that wasn't mentioned here, at least not in that portion, but is touched on a little bit in the reviews aspect, is there are a lot of technical problems that are still plaguing Hearthstone. A lot of lingering tech issues, especially on mobile, like bugs in game, but also bugs in like at a system level or a technical level, a device level that make it hard for people to play, which people are going to give up on that stuff. That's another problem probably of that 3 that they should add in, is a technical side of things. Just feels like the game is hanging on for dear life from a technical standpoint. So anyway, I thought this was a good video. Again, I'll drop a link in chat so you can go watch the whole thing if you want to check it out. Production values are insane as always for these videos. Did you guys find that interesting, by the way? What I just did? Was that an interesting little aside? Like, did that go well? Was that interesting or boring? Or, you know, yeah, Captain Awesome's got the gist. Should I upload it is basically what I'm asking. Yeah.